So, a few weeks ago, you have announced the need for a move from Green Deal towards a Smart Deal. And you have also said that Europe needs energy which is accessible, which is accessible to citizens, and which is green, but green was in the last third place. Meanwhile, the National Integrated Plan for Energy and Climate of Romania refers to a greenhouse gas reduction of 85% in just 5 years compared to 1990. And in 2045, Romania is to achieve climate neutrality. Therefore, my question is, what will this switch to Smart Deal from Green Deal change for energy and climate aims of Romania? And if accessibility is more important than the green transition, then what changes in the national energy strategy can we expect?
So every country in the world, including Romania, needs to solve this energy trilemma: energy security, energy competitiveness and accessibility or affordability, and of course, green energy. And my own view is that this is the correct order of priority, and that we cannot compromise energy security and the well-being of our citizens for a shock therapy of greening our energy sector, our economies. Romania is the #1 country in the EU when it comes to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. I think it's around 77% currently compared to 1990 levels. And so that in itself speaks to the commitment of my country for decarbonisation. At the same time, to protect energy security as well as competitiveness of our economy, we cannot afford to keep unplugging coal-based groups or even gas-based ones without replacing them with similar baseload production capacities. And at this point, the vision is to transition away from coal to gas and then move everything to nuclear in the medium to long term, which would ensure the country's energy security, but also quite competitive prices. Just to point something out, we've shut down over 7,000 megawatts of coal and gas groups up until 2022. And now when our consumption levels are high, we often have to turn to imports. That makes us vulnerable, but it also makes us pay a very high price for these imports. Typically, at a time when Romania imports, so does Bulgaria, Greece, so do other countries in our region. So that energy becomes extremely expensive. So that is the perspective I have argued for in Brussels. That is, it's time to put aside ideology and focus on very pragmatic, realistic concerns that our citizens have, because ultimately our duty is to represent the interests of our citizens and make sure that this energy transition is smart, it is supported by our people, because otherwise it will fail.
So, what is realistic as a direction for the energy transition? What kind of energy mix you envisage in, let's say, the perspectives of 15 or 20 years? What percentage of the overall energy mix could come and should come from renewable sources, and which ones? How important should nuclear power be? And yeah, okay, we'll speak about the coal phase out a bit more. So, for the moment, yeah.
I think for 2035, our targets are to have around 30 to 40% from renewable energy sources, solar and wind, about 20-30% from nuclear, and the rest would come from high efficiency hydro and gas. Nuclear is the solution, as I said earlier, for the longer term, and our plans there are very ambitious. We have over 2,000 megawatts in the pipeline. We are very advanced with the life extension for Unit 1 in Cernavoda. It's worked out very well for us. And I think Romania is the only country east of Berlin with a Western nuclear technology, with a Western-based nuclear program. All the others are still depending on former Soviet, now Russian technology, engineering, maybe even fuel. We are also in the process of implementing the project for units 3 and 4 in Chernavoda, so that will double that capacity there. At COP29 in Baku last year, we signed the EPCM contract over 3 billion euros, and the consortium, in our view, couldn't be better. It's Atkins Realis from Canada. They own the CANDU technology, which we already have in units 1 and 2. It is Ansaldo, the provider of turbines, also involved in units 1 and 2. It is the US through two very significant companies, Fluor and Sargent and Lundy. We are also advanced with our SMR project in Doicești. That is based on a US technology called NewScale. We have evaluated the different technologies and have decided this would be the path to take, at least in the short term. It is the only technology that has been certified by a regulator, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and our project involves 6 modules of 77 megawatts each. And now it's in FEED 2, which is basically the detailed design. So by the end of this year, early next year, we'll be able to reach the final investment decision phase. This would mean that by 2030, we would hope to have at least one module up and running. That may be the first in Europe, maybe among the first in the world. And we see that as a strategic competitive advantage that Romania could have in the region. As we all know, this technology is based on economies of scale. So the more you build, the cheaper it gets. And we would hope to be able to support a European-wide SMR implementation program, including operating through Nuclear Electrica, these facilities, contributing with education. We have the only simulator in Europe at the Polytechnic University in Bucharest. It's functional, it's already training the future engineers, and hence it could not be more important.
Okay, and my next question would consider the offshore wind energy project, as according to a 2024 World Bank study, Romania could cover more than 1/3 of its overall electricity needs through this one source, the offshore wind energy, if only a massive investment comes into being, a massive investment and construction of 360 turbines. There is even a roadmap for 2024. And I would like to ask what steps have been taken to make this project happen? Because turning Romania into an offshore energy hub could have not only a national but also regional implications. So is this project advancing, and what are the challenges facing it?
To us, offshore wind is a huge promise. We're proud to have a law for it adopted last year. I supported this bill, I initiated it. And to my knowledge, we're the only country in the Black Sea Basin with offshore wind legislation. That law sets out a roadmap that we need to follow. So we're now defining the go-to areas, as our concept is to do all the environmental studies, biodiversity, and all that ahead of the concessions. And once we put out the concessions for bidding, those are viable areas where the investors can just locate and build. We appreciate the help from the World Bank. Indeed, the study shows a total potential that is massive, 76 gigawatts, but between 3 and 7 gigawatts could be accomplished by 2032, 2033. I'm confident that we'll see the first turbines spinning in the Black Sea on the Romanian side by then. We are also working on upgrading our infrastructure. We need to evacuate that energy somehow through the eastern shore. Basically, HVDC, high voltage direct current cable connecting the Black Sea shore to the western border is advancing. We are nearing the end of the feasibility study phase. And of course, that project is part of the Green Corridor, where We are working with Azerbaijan, Georgia, Hungary, and now Bulgaria wants to join, and they're welcome to. And that will help, again, evacuate the energy from the 2 additional nuclear units as well as offshore wind. We are also setting up some important incentives for investors. Our law offers stable 30-year concession rights. We hope that's attractive, and we're also working on tapping EU funds for supporting these investments. Last year, we had our first contracts for difference auction. Of course, it targeted onshore solar and wind, but it went very well. And that legislation also covers offshore wind. So we have the framework in place. When the projects will be mature enough, we'll be able to launch the CFD auction. And of course, that will guarantee a price for selling that electricity for about 15 years or so. So that again should be important to investors. There are challenges as well, geopolitical. It's a sensitive area. Of course, we're all looking forward to the end of the conflict in Ukraine, but not under any conditions. We think the peace needs to be secure, and that's good for everybody, including the Black Sea region and for investments there, because these are multi-billion projects, and if there's a perception of lack of safety and predictability, of course, they will not happen. We're also happy to work together, and we've signed an MOU, I believe, last year with Greece and Bulgaria to share best practices on offshore wind, and not only. And so we're looking at this as a very collaborative effort to develop the Black Sea as an energy production hub, as well as, if you allow me, producing the equipment that is used for these offshore windmills. I think Constanța would be a natural candidate. It's the largest port on the Black Sea and the deepest port. So why not produce there the main parts that go in a wind turbine and in the windmill, and also create jobs and prosperity for our people.
A successful element of the green transition in Romania has been the boom of prosumers. By September 2024, there have been 150,000 prosumers in Romania, which has been also due to policy of the Romanian state, different incentives which it provided, but also periodically Romanian state intervened in this sector, for example, discussing whether a tax to be put on the money which people generate from prosuming activity, or whether and requesting batteries to be put for households prosumers. So what are the prospects of this sector, and what is the Romanian state policy at the time that comes towards prosumers?
Prosumers are part of our energy future. They're part of this 3D vision of decarbonization, digitalization, and decentralization. So my own vision is that we should enable any household that wants to become a prosumer to do so, to take their energy into their own hands, quite literally sometimes, and be able to lower their energy bills and also be more autonomous. Indeed, in Romania, I think we have a prosumer revolution ongoing. In 2020, I believe we had around 1,600 prosumers only. Today, there are over 160,000. I'm still waiting for the last report, but the number could be around 200,000 even. And total installed capacity is around 2,000 megawatts, so more than our nuclear plant, of course, with a different capacity factor. But with prosumers, the main need is to upgrade our infrastructure grid. So we have accessed and signed contracts for over 1.7 billion euros in grant funding from the Modernization Fund. 1.2 is only for distributors, for the distribution grid. And so all these works help accommodate more prosumers. At the same time, we have eliminated the infamous, I would say, tax on sun, or the possibility of implementing it. There's a EU directive that essentially allows a member state to tax the energy produced. Uh, we have completely eliminated it from our laws. That was a major demand from the prosumer community. And there is no current requirement for batteries, though I think that would be a good idea as long as the state can also subsidize the batteries a bit with grant funding, because currently we are helping prosumers. They get a VAT reduction for the solar panels, and very soon to be a law on batteries as well, the VAT reduction. So a lot to do. I think that the system needs to be fair. So, for instance, one idea we want to debate publicly is how much this energy costs, because essentially, if you compensate the energy one to one, of course, prosumers produce during the day when energy is cheap and consume at night or in the morning when there is no sun, when energy is expensive. So while a quantitative compensation scheme is in place, I think it is needed to look at also, what the monetary value of the energy produced slash consumed is, and ensure a fair compensation. Otherwise, of course, those who are not prosumers will be disadvantaged, and our aim is to have a level playing field for all consumers.
Okay, of course, there is a boom of prosumers. This is very good, but a criticism has been made that it is benefiting mostly the middle class in Romania. And I also want to ask you about policies which you plan or already apply towards the so-called energy poor people in Romania, which I guess are also not so few.
Energy poverty is a critical area, very close to our heart. We have about a third of our households that are in some degree of energy poverty. And of course, there's around 10,000 households that are still in extreme energy poverty based on the data we have. Those are households that essentially are disconnected completely from the grid. They're in remote villages, and for them, we've implemented a social program with a local NGO called the Intelligent Energy Association, and we have put up solar panels and batteries in remote households. And for the first time, they could turn on their light, and their kids no longer have to study by the candlelight, and they can have a small fridge and a small TV and get connected to the world. Beyond that, the Ministry of European Funds here has launched a €500 million program to address energy poverty. It's not just for households that are completely remote and disconnected from the grid, but also for poor households, households that are vulnerable. And this involves panels, batteries, but also energy efficiency investments. In the short term, of course, we've also had a compensation scheme for people's bills, utility bills, both for electricity and gas, which, based on Eurostat data, has ensured that Romanians have paid since more than 2.5 years ago, before I took over my mandate, the fifth cheapest electricity in the EU and the fourth cheapest gas. Of course, this is not a long-term solution, but it has provided some short-term relief. In the long term, I think doubling down on our energy efficiency investments, including in former communist or communist era built apartment blocks, which we have throughout the country and throughout the region, is very much needed. And of course, expanding the grid where commercially feasible. We're investing quite a bit in grid expansion for both electricity and gas. The challenges on gas expansion projects, the EU is very skeptical of financing them, unfortunately. We beg to differ. We believe gas is the transition fuel, and we hope that the position in Brussels will also be more flexible, if not through EU grants, though that would be ideal, at least through accessible financing from international financial institutions such as the EBRD or the EIB or others. so that we can make sure that our energy reaches as many Romanians as possible.
To add something more on the expansion of energy grid, in October or autumn last year, you made a specific criticism or complaint that there is a bottleneck inside the EU energy grid which prevents cheap energy from Western or Northern Europe to reach our region, Southeastern Europe. I was curious what followed after that. Did you receive support from other colleagues on EU level, or were any actions taken by anybody so that this problem of cheap energy reaching our region to be resolved?
Anybody who looks at the map of the European energy grid knows and can see that unfortunately the interconnections in the heart of Europe are missing or are highly insufficient. And we have formed a team, mostly with Bulgaria and Greece, but other member states have also expressed support. Hungary, the Baltic states, Finland, and many others, because essentially we're bound to have the same rules in a single market, but in practice, in very pragmatic terms related to the infrastructure, this is not a single market and it is not a functional market. And so we have called upon very strict deadlines for member states to develop interconnections. I think Romania and Bulgaria, by the way, they're good examples of European model member states from this perspective. We're interconnected with all our neighbors. We have around 4,000 megawatts interconnection capacity, so we can make sure that everybody around us is secure. We've helped the Republic of Moldova a lot during the energy crisis. That, of course, is we see it as a moral duty for us. We speak the same language, Romanian, and we will continue to do so. But when you look at the energy map and the prices for the day ahead, you see that on most days, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece especially, pay 2 to 3 times more than Western Europe. And that is a burden for households. It is a burden for the economy. It is a lack of competitiveness of our companies, especially because Europe as a whole already pays 3 times more for energy than the US or China. And so Eastern Europe, our eastern flank, is even under a heavier burden, and that needs to be addressed. And so after we raised the issue with the Commission and in the Council of Energy Ministers in the fall of last year, I see that the new Energy Commissioner, Dan Jorgensen, has interconnections as his most important priority. I see that the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has similarly often mentioned interconnections as a matter of urgent priority. I see the subject has been discussed in the European Council among the heads of state of member states, and I think we're on the right track. We just need to add to everything, if you will, carrots and sticks. So perhaps EU grants to support states that are working on developing interconnections, and we already have the PMI, PCI instrument that I think needs to be financed even more. But also the sticks, which is if you're a member state and you continue to refuse to develop your interconnections, then you should face a certain level of penalty, whatever that means, to be defined. But I don't think we can tolerate the situation any longer. And I think it's in everybody's interest to have a truly single European market. While on most days energy is cheaper in the West, there are days when the wind blows on our coast, and we have had prices lower than in Western Europe or than in Germany. And so for those days, it would be best for Western Europe to interconnect as well. And so it's not just our own interest, but ultimately it's a common interest, and I think a matter of principle that following the vision of the founding fathers of the European Union, Jean Monnet and others, if this is truly a union of coal and steel back in the day and of energy today, then this energy needs to be able to flow freely. And that will ensure a level competitive playing field for our companies and a fair distribution of wealth for our citizens.
Okay, the last question would concern a topic related to the coal phase out and the challenges, especially in a regional way. I mean, I want to ask about Oltenia and Hunedoara power complexes. What scenarios are being considered for them? How realistic is to see their future in relation to renewable sources or to hydrogen, as Romania has also a hydrogen development strategy? And how long could the conversion take, and how many jobs could be created in view, having in mind all the people who now work in coal energy production in these complexes?
Both issues are among our very top priorities. We focus on them daily because ultimately it's about people's lives, and going beyond the green ideology, we need to ensure that we don't leave anybody behind truly, not just in a rhetorical fashion, but actually on the ground. So of course we have a just transition fund that is accessible. I think it's over 2 billion euros. Both Oltenia and the Jiu Valley are eligible, and those projects shall start, I hope, very soon. They're with the Ministry of European Funds, but of course our Ministry of Energy is also helping out. The problems are of different scale. In Oltenia, it's lignite and still around 8,000 people working there, and around 1,800 megawatts of installed capacity. In Valea Jiului, it's a lot less. It's 2,000 coal miners, deep mines, and very little contribution to our energy mix. It's a single coal plant that is still functional, Paroșeni. If Jiu Valley, with its deep coal mines, is slated to transition completely away from coal by 2032, in Oltenia, the deadline set through the National Recovery and Resilience Plan is January 1st of next year, and we have argued that we cannot continue to shut down groups without having an alternative. And we've worked on that alternative, which is new gas-powered plants. Unfortunately, because of reasons independent of our will, we've launched tenders and we had no offers, multiple tenders. The prices for gas turbines have skyrocketed, an over 50% increase. There's huge demand, especially from Ukraine, and there's very few EPC contractors available to implement such projects. And so we will argue for a 4-year extension in Oltenia. That said, we will keep the 2032 maximum timeline for eliminating coal from our energy mix. But again, in Oltenia, we need that time to make sure that the gas groups come online and safely replace our coal production, especially since our nuclear unit 1 will pause for 2 years come 2027 for its life extension project. In Oltenia, we have a restructuring plan. We have access money from the modernization fund. They're working on over 700 megawatts of solar, plus the 2 gas power plants for a total of over 1,300 megawatts. And so it's just a matter of timing, not of lack of commitment, but of recognizing pragmatically and objectively the causes of delays and making sure that the 2 time horizons are aligned, eliminating coal and replacing it with gas for the short and medium term. And for the social problem, indeed, it's not easy for those people. I remember when we visited the mines in Valea Jiului, at the end of one of our visits, one of the coal miners came to us and he said, Mr. Minister, Mr. Minister. And I said, please. And he said, look at my hands. And indeed, they were the hardest working hands that I had ever seen, and the blackest ones because of the coal. And he said, I don't care about all these windmills and solar panels. I care about my family and putting food on their table. And you have to have that social dimension, because ultimately, if our citizens do not support this energy transition, we will reach nowhere, we will go nowhere, and it will fail. And so, again, pragmatism, moving away from shock therapy and pure ideology, and focusing on solutions that actually work for people, while, of course, attracting all the EU funds possible for the energy transition. And I'm proud to note that last week we had a new reunion of the Modernization Fund Committee. Romania is number one in the EU for attracting funds from the Modernization Fund. A total of 10 billion euros has been approved already for our country, and over 6 billion has already been paid into our accounts. And so my argument is not that we do away with such investments, we need them, but to pace them and also to be very realistic about what we can take out of our systems without putting something equivalent in place.
One more question, if possible, even if it may be a short one. There was a conflict between you and green NGOs in Romania. I was wondering if pragmatism is the line. Are there any lines, issues where there is common interest between Romanian Energy Ministry and these NGOs?
We're open to discussions and dialogue. We'll have a public debate very soon. But what I've highlighted is a number of cases that we consider abusive of trials initiated by a couple of NGOs. It's not all of them, it's really very few, where they have blocked investments or attempted to block or delay much needed investments. In Neptune Deep, in our gas project there, which will bring over 20 billion euros to the budget, so in the pockets of our citizens, it will double our gas production and consolidate our leadership position. We're already the number one gas producer in Europe. They have claimed that there are ancient relics on the bottom of the Black Sea, 160 kilometers away from shore, at depths varying between 100 meters and 1,000 meters. Hard to believe that somebody would build a court case around it, but they have. And so we've won all the cases against them, or actually initiated by them. We've won these cases so far, and we're going to keep fighting this battle, but I don't think it's to anybody's benefit, and it certainly makes achieving energy independence harder. So in that sense, I think we should all have common goals as responsible citizens. I can understand NGOs and their environmental causes. I support them. And, as long as it doesn't make our country more vulnerable, I don't think we can negotiate with anybody the energy independence and security of our people. And the same goes for our hydro plants. We have more than 700 hydro plants started before 1989. They have been systematically challenged in court, even though many of them are almost finalized. They are between 70 and 98% done. So it's hard to rationally picture further environmental damage from a hydro plant that is 98% done. And so we're very keen to work together with NGOs and address any reasonable concerns. At the same time, my mandate here at the ministry is to ensure that Romanians have access to energy that is secure, affordable, and clean.